that better? Yes. Sorry about that. My bad. Before we get started, and I've got a few comments to make, and then we will go on to a presentation by Mr. Sweeney. During that presentation, I believe he will cover some changes that were made from 2.0 to 3.0.
That's correct.
And then cover some on the map as well.
That is correct.
That is correct. Okay. So I want to welcome everybody to the Shreveport-Caddo Metropolitan Planning Commission. That's for public hearing agenda items. Can you go with that? Okay. If you wish to make a public comment regarding items listed on the agenda of the public hearing, please fill out a form provided in the foyer or up here at this desk at the speaker stand. You can give that to Ms. Witt, and she will forward it up here to me, and we'll give everybody a chance to speak. We are going to be limiting the time frame to 3 minutes per speaker. Mr. Remedies will be keeping the time for me. Hopefully, he will. After Mr. Sweeney makes his presentation, we will allow for public comment. At that time, I will call out based on the cards I have in hand and any additional cards. And even when we run out there, I'll ask if there's any additional comments from people in the audience. When you come to the podium, please state your full name, your address and zip code before addressing the board. And once again, we give you 3 minutes. As a courtesy, please remember to turn off all your cell phones or put them on vibrate. Sure, I did it. And we'll get started in just a second. I wanted to make one simple comment, and I think this is kind of important. This is in regard to the UDC, and I couldn't think of a better analogy to use than this one. This is an iPhone. Everybody has PDA smartphones now. This is an iPhone. The richest corporation in the world is Apple. They have more money than anybody else. They have more money sitting around in cash than a lot of countries. I mention this because the smartest company, or the wealthiest company in the world, hires the smartest engineers to write their software. They did a version of 10.0. It came out about 3 weeks ago. I don't know how many y'all updated. I suggest they went 9 something right now. This company hires the best, brightest minds in the world. Since they released 10.0, they did 10.01 and 10.02. The smartest minds in the world released a flawed product. Why do I say that? We've had the staff, the consultant, the public, the board members, all working to give you the best document we can. What does that mean? That when we roll it out day one, it's going to be the best that we knew we had at that moment. Does that mean it's perfect? Absolutely not. Does that mean we're going to have a 10.01 and a 10.02? Absolutely. I want to say this because when we release 10.01 and 10.02, there's going to be people out there saying, y'all didn't get it right the first time. It wasn't for due diligence. It wasn't for trying to give you the best there was the first time. I say that because I know there's going to be people that are going to say something about it. Believe me, I've gone through this thing. I've got the last 2 versions and I'm comparing them between them. And even given that, I'm just now laying eyes on some things that are kind of coming to light that, and a lot of times it's just questions I have that are answered by Mark and the staff, and it's like, I got it. I see where you're going. So I don't want you to assume that just when we get to that point where we finally vote on it and send it to our parents, the city and the parish, for their to finally look at and decide on voting on it, you're not going to get a perfect document. There is no such thing as a perfect document. If there was in 1954s, they would have dreamed up of the little free libraries. And they didn't. And we had to deal with it 2 years ago. So patience is a virtue well learned, something I had to learn as an adult. So please have patience with us as we go through the most monumental change the city has seen on the zoning codes and ordinances in the last 60 years, 55 years. So with that, yes, Mr. Reed, you want to cover this as well?
In just a few minutes, Mr. Sweeney is going to provide an email address, I believe, that in the best efficient use of our time this evening and being respectful for others. You probably should start with the if you want to make comments in your 3 minutes with the things that are at the top priority, because after 3 minutes, we'll ask you to email the rest of those, but Mr. Sweeney and the staff are going to list the questions and concerns online, and I believe our response to those. So please don't feel as if we're stifling your voice, but understand if we allowed everyone to review the entire document, it would be well into the night when we would be here. So we had to have some way to condense the meeting. So it's not for trying to stifle your voice. I promise you we'll listen to your concerns, but we just don't have the time to listen to everyone's concerns. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you, sir. With that, Mr. Sweeney, I will turn it over to you.
Well, I'm about to give you a presentation of which some of you have seen and probably may fall asleep in the middle of it. But it's very essential that I cover these topics for you because I think it gives you a pretty good perspective of where we've been, what we've accomplished, based on the comments we've received from y'all for quite some period of time. I've been here 2 years, and I've been working on it for 2 years, and this started 4 years ago. And so this is a long process. You talk about patience. This is definitely an example of testing our patience. But we're at a point now where we're ready to offer something that we think will change the way we do business and the way people think about Shreveport-Caddo. This is very important. All right, well, let's go ahead and I'm going to give you a brief overview. Why are we here? Well, I guess the main reason we're here is because of the Unified Development Code and what it means to our community. This is a golden opportunity to make some changes that have been needed for decades and to make us very competitive as a community. We know that what we have right now are two separate ordinances, one for the parish, one for the city. They're outdated, they contradict each other, they don't make sense, and they overlook a lot of stuff. And it's now time to, I would say, belly up to the bar and do something about it because we've lived with this for a long time. It has put us at a tremendous disadvantage. I want you to realize, and some references have been made, back in 1927 there was a model code created that laid the foundation to zoning and subdivisions for us to implement legally. In 1957 was the first comprehensive plan and the first code created. That's the code we have today. Literally 60 years without a new code. We've made a lot of amendments, but I always like to use my analogy. It's like patching up a tire. If you go to the tire repair guy, he'll tell you, sir, you can't patch that tire anymore because if you do it, it's going to blow. Well, that's where we're at right now. So basically, in 2010, both the Parish Commission and the City Council adopted the Great Expectations Plan, the 2030 plan. And in that plan, it said one of the most important steps we can take to change our community for the better is to create and adopt a unified development code. And that's where we are today. What's the purpose of it? Well, make it predictable results. Right now, you don't really quite know what you're going to end up with when you start the process. Make it about quality of life. How do we improve the quality of life of each and every citizen? And encourage economic development. That's a very important thing. We've got to incentivize people to reinvest in Shreveport and Caddo Parish, especially in our older neighborhoods. The whole intent here was, we want something that's comprehensive, amendable, legal, sound, and easy to use, and that's the goal of the UDC. This is an innovative departure from the existing regulations because it's based, again, as I said earlier, on the master plan that was approved by both bodies back in 2010 to get us to the point of a quality of life, well-developed, well-planned community. Now, we're not the only deer in the forest. If you look at this list, these are cities and communities that have adopted a unified development code in the last several years. You'll notice at the bottom is Bossier City. That was 2003. They've had one now for 13 years. I'm not telling you that because they have a UDC that they're growing, but every one of these communities are growing communities that are reinvesting in their inner cities and trying to develop a city of a higher quality for their residents and for their citizens. I just would like for us to become one of that on that list one of these days. Here's the chronology of the UDC, and I'm not going to read every bit of this, but back in In May of 2015, we released our first public draft. That was the first time the public ever got to see it. We then did a series of 5 open houses and a series of multiple stakeholder meetings. When I say stakeholders, that means the different organizations, civic groups, active groups, and businesses that have a vested interest in our community. And in that process, we gained a lot of input from the citizens. We then followed up, again, with the stakeholder meetings. We did 2 public forums that were tailor-made for the neighborhood associations in August of 2015. Then in December of 2015, we released the second public draft. We looked at all the changes and all the requests and all the comments that y'all had made. We came out with a second version in December of 2015. We also produced a new zoning map at that time, where we were able to show you what the new zoning categories would be, what your property would be zoned as, and what impact it would have on the community. We continued the process of public outreach, working with stakeholders. We even had a joint reception with both the City Council and the Parish Commission back in June of this year, in which we brought them together to discuss all of the issues of concern to them. We continued the outreach process, and then September of 2016, this month, we released the third and final draft of the UDC, along with changes to the proposed zoning map that we had already released earlier. All of this information was available to the public on our website, or you could go to various locations like our public libraries to get a copy of the document if you don't have a computer. And you can always come to our office to schedule appointments or to meet with us one-on-one. That brings us to the full point here. We're in September of 2016, and we're here at the first of 2 public hearings about the Unified Development Code. We've done an exhaustive 16 months of public outreach. We have tried very hard not to leave any stone unturned. If you were interested in this, we gave you an opportunity, and we continue to give opportunities for the voice of the people, because this is to be their document. One of the most important steps we took was one-on-one interviews with the elected officials, both the City Council and the Parish Commission. They have the responsibility as your representatives to vote on this. And in order for us to get them to a point of I refer to as understanding all the components and understanding what this means, myself, as well as some of my staff, sat down and visited with each of them to ask them their concerns and to answer their questions. Who were the stakeholders that we were involved in? This is just a sample. This is not all of them. We met with the Home Builders Association, the Downtown Development Authority, the Shreveport Regional Arts Council, and some of these were multiple meetings, not just one time. Engineers, architects, and landscape association groups, developers, realtors, the billboard industry, in particular Lamar, and numerous neighborhood association groups that we've also met with, as well as the Committee of 100. We've gone back to explain and to lay out the plan of what this ordinance means to the community. The citizen feedback has been extremely important to us. Every chance we get, that's what we rely on the most. Because as you as citizens taking an interest in your community, you wouldn't be here tonight if you didn't care about your community. And in honor of that, we've tried to respond to those concerns. Now, we've not always been able to do exactly what maybe somebody wanted. That's not the case. I realize there's always a point where you agree to disagree on something. But consistently, if we could find a point of compromise or a point of resolution between the differences of our opinions, we sought that out. Okay, what are some of the major changes identified in response to the public and stakeholder comments that we've been doing? Well, I'm not going to get into great detail, but we hit some of the issues that y'all brought to us quite frequently. Now, there's a lot of issues that people talked about, but most of those things were things we could correct easily, or they were something that was maybe a mistake in the document to begin with. But some of the main things that we talked about were like livestock. How do you deal with horses? How do you deal with chickens? And we provided a pathway where we put in additional restrictions on those types of uses, but still to allow people to have the livestock, but in certain restrictive areas of the city and of the parish that made common sense to the public. One of the biggest changes we made was the payday title loan agencies. Now you might say, well, what's that all about? Well, unfortunately, this business has a tendency to locate in low-income neighborhoods and to concentrate in areas that have neighborhoods that are in decline, to kind of feed off of them. And we looked at other cities and we said, what are they doing? And they said, hey, you can space them out 1,000 feet, and you can require a special use permit if they come within 500 feet or less of a residential district, and you can prohibit them in certain zoning districts, as in the case of C1, which is our current B1 zoning. That's in the UDC, because we're responding to neighborhoods that often get neglected and often are forced to accept things they don't want. Billboards. This was one of the most constructive conversations we had, especially with Lamar. We came up with a provision that they feel comfortable with and feel is workable. We have a 2-for-1 provision, which basically says if you put up 2 square feet of billboard space, if you put up a square foot if you add in an additional square foot of billboard space, you have to bring down 2 square feet of non-conforming billboard space. Basically a 2-for-1 provision. We also did a cap and replace program, which allowed them to build up credits like a bank account. When they took a billboard down, we could bank those credits and allow them to put a billboard in a permitted area. And then we restricted the billboards to certain zoning districts. Not in every district can you do that anymore. And that was a very constructive conversation that went on through at least 5 or 6 meetings that we actually had on that issue. Accessory structures. I bring this up because that's always a big thing. We brought the number of accessory structures down from 3 to 2 in the proposed revision. But we allowed some exemptions. Basically said if you have a barn or silo and you're in an agricultural area, they're not counted as accessory structures. Likewise, right now we count detached garages and carports as accessory structures. Under the UDC, we're not going to count those because technically those aren't accessory structures. They're a different animal, and so we feel like that's a much more realistic approach to accessory structures. Mobile homes or manufactured housing. Right now, if you want a mobile home or a manufactured home that's the same animal, you have to go before the Zoning Board of Appeals to get approved. Under the new Unified Development Code, you don't have to do that anymore, but you're going to be restricted to certain districts where you can have manufactured homes. That would be your agricultural area, your mobile home subdivisions, and your mobile home parks. If you have a mobile home in an area that's non-conforming, so to speak, right now, you're allowed to keep it, but once you no longer live there or you remove it, you can't put it back. This is a way that most communities are headed right now, restricting manufactured housing into certain areas of the community. This is a big one, alcohol-related uses. We basically defer or refer to the Chapter 10, which is a separate ordinance that governs all the uses related, how you sell and consume alcohol, from hours of operation to what you name it. Right now, the city is actually looking at revising that section to bring it up to date and to be more contemporary. Well, this is what we did. We took a very logical approach to alcohol. We said if you have retail sales of beer and wine, basically your convenience stores and your grocery stores, that should be allowed as a use by right in most commercial districts, but not in your C1 or what we call B1 district today that's closest to your neighborhoods. The retail sale of liquor, which is your liquor stores, would be a use by right only in the newly created C4 district, but would require a special use permit if you were trying to go downtown or in other commercial districts or industrial districts, but would be prohibited in the C1 district that, as I mentioned earlier. Restaurants serving alcohol, which means they have to have 60% of their sales have to be for food, would be allowed as a use by right in all commercial downtown and industrial districts. Bars would be allowed as a use by right in most of the heavier commercial downtown industrial districts, but would require a special use permit for those zoning districts closest to the residential neighborhoods, and bars would be prohibited in what you call C1, now currently called B1 district. What about landscaping? Well, we want to make our city look good. We want to make our parish look good. And a lot of this is one of the things is the quality of life element that people are starving for in most communities. They want a community that not only looks good, but functions well. And one of the things we did is we provided an incentive for tree preservation, which says that if you will save some of your trees, we'll give you credit for that in your landscaping plan. Instead of beating people over the head with that, we're incentivizing the process. We now have officially, for the first time, a plant palette. You might say, why is that important? Because so many times people will go and plant something that dies here and doesn't work in our extreme weather and our differences in our rain patterns. But the truth of the matter is, in the UDC, there is a definitive palette that lays out the right kinds of trees and the right kinds of shrubs to plant and where to plant them. In other words, we're going to limit it such that if you're underneath a power line, you can't plant a tree that grows too tall and gets into the power line. That's common sense. And that's one of the things we offer under the plant palette is logical location of trees and shrubbery within the city. Parking lot screening would be provided, screening from the street. And you may not realize this sometimes, but stormwater management is a big thing here. The more greenery you have on a site, the more open, unpaved property you have, the less flow of water you have, runoff water into the street system. This is a great way to manage our stormwater issue, which is a big issue here in Shreveport. Parking regulations. I'll go into a little bit of detail here. If you want to park above the required parking, let's say you are required to have 100 parking spaces, we'd allow you to go 15 spaces above that, it'd be 115. But we're trying to make it so that people don't overpark. But if you wanted to, if you had a special project where you need ample more parking than normal, there is a provision that allows for that through me, the executive director. Our commercial parking ratios have been lowered. I've said this many times in many meetings. For example, for a restaurant, typically right now you're required to have one parking space for every 100 square feet of floor area. Under the UDC, it'd be a 1 to 300 ratio. Because what most people have learned across the United States is we're overparked. You go to most shopping centers that you see here in Shreveport, you'll see there's excessive parking. And it could be used for actually additional building space or landscape space. It actually gives an opportunity to use the property to a fuller level than what we do now. We have parking exemptions that encourage redevelopment. Some of our older neighborhoods, older commercial areas where they don't have the parking required on the lot, we see no reason to penalize them, and so we encourage and we allow for them to develop and expand those facilities without requiring additional parking. Because we have a lot of areas that need reinvestment, and we don't want the requirements of the code to stand in the way of redevelopment. And then we also provide reasonable parking for bicycles. It's not excessive, but it does require that certain size and level of development will provide a certain number of bicycle parking places for people, because that's one of the things that people are looking for is recreational and workforce mobility beyond that of the car, to be able to walk, to be able to ride your bicycle, to be able to take mass transit. Another item is site plan review. Back in August of this year, the City Council and the Parish Commission both implemented a new procedure for site plans, which means all site plans come through my office where they're approved. They don't have to go to a board, they don't have to go anywhere but just to the MPC staff. The reason we did that was because it made it user-friendly. We could speed up the review process. Rather than taking 60 to 90 days to get a project approved, we could approve something in maybe 30 days. Again, making us competitive. One of the most important parts of this, and it was one of the things that was stressed to me by the development community back when I first got here, is there a way that we can know the cost and the issues of developing a piece of property without having to spend a lot of money, without having to spend a lot of money and time in the application and development process? And so we created that through this site plan review thing. We now have a process now that you can come in for free and get input not only from the MPC staff, but from the city departments and from the parish departments. And it gives you a window of opportunity to know whether or not you want to proceed forward with development or if you want to take a different route. No cost, it's a free service, but that's already something we're doing right now, and that will be in the UDC. Appeals. a lot of people have asked the questions about appeals. All zoning cases go straight to the city council and the parish commission after the MPC makes its recommendation, thus not requiring citizen appeals. As it stands right now, if the MPC denies a case, it stops unless the citizens appeal it to the council or the parish commission. This new process says all cases, whether the MPC recommends approval or denial relating to zoning, this is zoning, will always go to the city council and the parish commission for final decision. Citizens don't have to do anything. They get a second chance automatically without having to do one thing to talk about that zoning case in front of their elected officials. What's the ZBA's new role? It's going to be shrunk. They're not going to do what they used to do anymore. They're not going to do any cases on alcohol. They're not going to do mobile homes anymore. They're not going to do hours of operation. None of that's going to be something that they do anymore. They're only going to do variances and zoning appeals, like if you need a variance and how far you sit back from the right-of-way or whatever. But the ZBA's decisions will only be appealed to district court. They will not go back to the city council, and they will not go back to the parish commission. That's what most cities do in the United States today, is taking it straight to district court from the ZBA. But they'll only meet when we need them to meet, which is going to be a lot less than what it is now. The MPC executive director's site plan decisions that we just talked about a few minutes ago can be appealed to the MPC board. If you don't like the decision I've made, you can appeal it to this board, the MPC board, and they can reconsider it for you. We've cleaned up the language. Terms, definitions, illustrations, charts have all been improved. Got a lot of assistance from the city attorney's office on some of the charts and stuff, and we really appreciate that. And any assistance we get from any direction to help it make it a better document is always welcome. Text amendments. As Alan said earlier, the chair, Alan Young, the UDC can be easily amended. That's not the end of the game. If the city council and the parish commission approve this in November and December of this year, and we realize 6 months later there's something we forgot, or something comes up we didn't even think about, both the city council and the parish have the opportunity to amend that document. And it will require a vote from both bodies, because remember, it's a unified code. They're not separate anymore. So if something changes here, it has to go through both bodies to be approved. We do have design standards in there. No, we're not talking about architectural styles. We don't care about that. We basically want you to have windows and doorways where they're supposed to be, which is at the front part of the building facing the streets. And we ask for windows on the upper levels. You can do what you want to on the other sides of the building, and that's limited based on what zoning district is in. Like in C1 and C2, there'll be some requirements there, but not in C3 and C4. This is a very common thing that most cities do nowadays, is to have design standards. Building materials. We were asked questions about that. Things like corrugated metal, EIFS, plain concrete, metal siding are limited in use on any facade facing a public right-of-way. Such materials may be used as a decorative item up to 25%, but all the other sides of the building, east, west, south, whatever direction we're talking about here, can be whatever material you want it to be. We're more interested in how it faces to the street and how it relates to the street. Again, very flexible and very common in most communities. Our uses that you see in our zoning districts are now much easier to understand. Let me explain something to you. What we do currently is that if it's not listed specifically in our ordinance, you can't do it. Well, that ties our hands. The little free libraries came along. We didn't know where to put that. Other things came along. We have no way to address it. We're constantly having to adjust to that. Under the UDC, we have broader categories, like, in this case, retail goods establishments would cover a variety of different uses that we don't have to specifically spell out, so that our ordinance is flexible with whatever new changes come along. And that's very important, because right now we have a very rigid ordinance. Let's talk about the zoning map. And I know some of you may want to talk about this a little bit more as we get into the comments, but I feel like this is kind of an important section to kind of emphasize for you. The zoning map is meant to reflect what we think will be the best way to handle development going forward. I would tell you that the vast majority of the districts are just a renaming. In other words, B1 becomes C2, B2 becomes C2, B2 becomes C2. All of that's made to make it just a different way of wording it. It's not drastically different. Your residential districts are now given a more simplified names. For example, when we say R17, what are we talking about? That's saying that the minimum lot size for that development has to be 7,000 square feet. If it's R112, it means the minimum lot size has to be 12,000 square feet. So it makes it very simple process. But there's a lot of new districts that we did introduce. I'm not going to go through all of those because we don't have enough time tonight. But I do encourage you to go and look more deeply at the UDC. It explains exactly what it's about and what the uses are concerning. I'm going to hit some highlights here in just a few minutes that will talk about this. But anything that's highlighted here are new districts that we have introduced in the UDC. Okay, so let's talk for just a second about some things that might be of interest to you. Let's talk about the downtown area, and the downtown area is right there. We created a series, it's called a D1 district, but it has a series of 6 sub-districts that are much more specific as to what the downtown area wants to become. Working with the downtown folks and understanding that what they want and what the community wants, we created such things as the downtown core district, the residential mixed-use district, as well as the downtown arts and culture sub-district as well. All of these were knitted together so that we could create a vibrant concept for downtown with a specialized use in each one of these sub-districts. This is very important because a very important goal here of the UDC is the revitalization of the downtown area. Another thing that I wanted to bring to your attention that I think is important, and that is some of our older neighborhoods that have been neglected, like in this area right in here, and areas that are near the downtown area, we're referred to as the RUC, or Urban Core Residential Zoning District. That allows greater flexibility in those areas of the city to be more innovative in the design. It allows for a higher density amount of type of housing so that you can have investors come back into those portions of the city and invest and get more for their money because of the higher density. We're talking about townhomes, duplexes, as well as regular single-family homes or zero-lot lines. Another one that you might want to find interesting on this map that I want to highlight, and we can talk about this more at length if you wish, and that would be something that's referred to as the IMU right there. What's IMU? That's industrial mixed use. You might say, well, what's that? Do you ever notice all the older warehouse buildings that surround the downtown area that are often in disrepair and lack of use? This allows for someone to come in and put in shops, restaurants, and loft apartments, as well as have a business. We're trying to be creative so that people will reinvest in these older buildings, which, by the way, are often built to last forever and are built with high quality materials. This is a great investment opportunity for the community. And that district would be one that I think would make a big difference for our city as well in terms of growth and development. Another one that I want to bring to your attention, and I'm going to try to highlight it here for you. You see where Line Avenue is, right? Get that right. Right here. I believe is this Line Avenue? Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
Yeah, Line Avenue right there. You see the dark red? That's referred to as the Urban Corridor Commercial Zoning District. The idea there was to allow for mixed-use development for the first time in some of our most important corridors. I give you emphasis to Line Avenue, and I give emphasis to that upper portion of Uri Drive, an area that's begging for redevelopment, where someone could come in and parcel together several of those smaller lots and create something that relates to the street, that's walkable, that would be shops, restaurants, possibly loft apartments, something that's more urban in context, but that is something that would really fit well into the neighborhood. This is something that's a new district, and I think it's a very exciting opportunity for our city. Another one I'm going to go to the next slide. And this is one I kind of want to emphasize to you. Another one's called the Urban Village Commercial District, and I want to take you to Mall St. Vincent, which is right there. And we made that urban village, and I'll tell you the reason why. Because we know eventually the Mall St. Vincent, which doesn't do that great, could be redeveloped, maybe perhaps at some point in time as more of an outdoor open market design, which is what's real popular right now, and create a series of opportunities to build in residential as well as commercial and various business opportunities. It still allows them to operate as a mall like they are right now. But if they want to be creative, like you've seen in other communities, and create something that would be a magnet for development, this would be a great piece of property that could be done that way. Another one that I want to bring to your attention that I think is a nice innovation for our zoning districts, and that is the IC, or institutional campus. And I'm going to bring your attention to Willis-Knighton, which is right there, and then Centenary, which is right there. And the point of the matter is, this allows for a specific zoning for a campus-style development that allows them to develop and gives them greater flexibility to redevelop and to expand their facilities while respecting the neighborhoods around them. This is a whole new district that gives them some opportunities they don't currently have. And it's something that you'll find in a lot of other communities. LSUS would be an example of an institutional campus, as is Centenary College, and as well as the LSU Medical Center facility, as well as Willis-Knighton. That's something, when we mentioned this to the Willis-Knighton folks that we were doing this, they were very excited about it. Because they said, you know, all the time we have this patchwork of zoning that doesn't make sense. I said, we're going to take that away. We're going to give you one zoning district that covers all your property, that gives you maximum flexibility to expand and grow. Let me go to the next one. This is my last slide on the zoning. And I want to bring your attention to the light green is called OS, or open space. That's your parks, your golf courses, your areas where people will recreate for the most part. You know, right now our zoning for most of our parks facilities are like B1 or something like that, or a commercial zoning, and we're going to change all of it to open space OS, so that if for some reason the city or the parish doesn't develop something and it gives a piece of property away, it can't be developed as commercial. It will remain as OS. The dark green is called natural areas, and you'll see that up as you get closer to the river. Several of the areas along the Red River are been designated as natural areas to preserve and protect forests and marshes, and along bayous. That's a new zoning district we don't have now that will help us maintain quality of those areas and not allow them to be either developed or allow them to be preserved for the public's benefit. Another thing I wanted to bring your attention to is something that I think is a very good idea. If you'll notice down below at the end, there's a zoning district called RE zoning, which is residential estate. And that's a holding pattern. And why I call it a holding pattern, it means that if you're out on the edge of the city and you've invested your money in your single-family home and in your neighborhood, the last thing you want to see happen is someone come in and put in a manufactured home next to you, or another use that's not of value or to your property. So we actually propose rezoning some of the areas along the edge of the city to this RE residential estate, which means it has to be an estate type zoning for single-family homes, large lots. You can still do some agricultural stuff there as well, but it is like a holding pattern to prevent other development from occurring that would hurt the value of those subdivisions along the edge of the city. So those are some of the things that we propose in the zoning, and we certainly can talk about that more. I'm now reaching the conclusion of my long presentation, and bear with me here. I just want you to realize that we've come a long ways. We're right now at this public hearing on the 29th. We have another one coming out on the 18th, and it's at that meeting that there will be a recapping of what we've learned tonight. Your comments, your statements will be taken in, recorded, and then we'll recap some of that on the 18th. But the most important thing about this particular meeting on the 18th will be that's when a vote will occur by this board, voting to recommend it on to the City Council and the Parish Commission. Okay, let's take a what-if scenario. Let's just say it goes on to the city council and the parish, and they approve it in November and December. I realize that may shift a little bit or change. But the reality is that if that did happen, then in January and February and March would be a transition period where we would be training and getting things ready and notifying the people in the development community what the transition was going to be about. This actual document and the new zoning map would automatically come into effect on April 1st, 2017. That's when the light would switch on. All the old regulations would go away, the old zoning would go away, everything would go into the new system by that point in time. I realize that date can fluctuate. I realize that depending on what the reaction is with the council and the parish, that there could be some delay there. I'm realistic about that. I'm also realistic that there will possibly be amendments made to the document and to the zoning map as well. But we can deal with all of that. But the intent here, again, is to try to get this done because, folks, it has been 60 years, and I do believe it's time to do something. So after 4 years, you might ask, how much money have we spent on this project? Well, $450,000 is what was allocated for this project. And the end result is going to be a logical, user-friendly format, review standards that are clear and consistent and illustrated where appropriate, legally defensible standards. In other words, the test of legal challenge, and a streamlined, predictable application review and approval process. Once again, we want to be competitive. We want to get people to invest. And I don't have to tell y'all, that's been a struggle for the last several years. It's been hard to get people to invest here. And I think this will change the game plan big time. It's not going to do everything. It's not going to make everything wonderful. But I'll tell you what, this is one of the most important steps we could possibly take to change the community and make our community a better place. And that's the end of my presentation. I just want to mention, and we'll mention this again, the next meeting is on October the 18th in the same spot at 6 p.m. And we want each and every one of you to come back if you get that chance, and we'd love to have you participate in that one as well.
Thank you, Mark. Just want to remind everybody of the process. I have a few cards already turned in that wish to speak. I will give everybody the opportunity to speak that would like to speak, even if you did not turn in a card. As you approach the podium, please make sure you say your full name and address for the record, including your zip code, so we can have it for the record. Once again, any questions you have, whether you ask them now or in writing to Mark, he will do his due diligence to try to get those answered and put up on the website so you can go back and look in the future and find out what the answer it was. We don't want to stifle anybody's ability to speak or to have their comments heard, but we are limited to 3 minutes apiece. So with that, I will call Mr. Tom Arsenault to the speaker, and Andy Craig, you will be up next. We'll find out how brief a lawyer could really be.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, and thank you very much. My name is Tom Arsenault. I live at 536 Jordan Street, Shreveport, Louisiana, 71101. I have some very brief comments. Number one, thank you, thank you, thank you. Bravo. I've been working with this since the master plan in 2010. I think your draft is an outstanding draft that will move our city forward and consider all of the people who are involved. I have a couple of map issues that I'd like to talk with you about as I read them. And one of my maps is easier to read than the other one, and they have to do with the RHU districts, the two historic districts. Well, there are several of them, but the two I'm particularly interested are the Highland and Fairfield districts. And by my reading of the map, the Highland, your RHU district, is not coextensive with the actual map of the Highland Historic District, which I think is what you intend. I'll show you if I'm... Okay, great. Great. Thanks.
But Mr. Arsenault, if you could just leave that, can you leave that with us?
Yeah, I can leave it with, what I have is, I can send a PDF. These are in color. I just didn't have a
Maybe
color
live now.
printer.
See if
But
it
I
works.
think
There we are.
that the Highland Historic District goes further south than the HU district, and those are referred to the Historic Preservation Commission, and I think they just need to be consistent with those legislations. So I will leave those with you to take a look at, okay? The next one is trees. The oldest citizens of Shreveport are our trees. And that is particularly true in neighborhoods like Highland, Fairfield, South Highlands, and Broadmoor, where you have trees that are generations old. Replacing them will take longer than Mr. Remedi's grandchildren's lives. So I'm here to support two things. One, the notice requirements for the utilities and that plan, and two, tree preservation. There are a group of people here who learned that there were two over 100-year-old live oak trees along Fairfield Avenue that were about to be cut down. Healthy live oak trees on Fairfield Avenue. We have been meeting for the last 30 days or so since we found out about it to seek a solution. We have had some indications that the church that proposed to do this is now beginning to listen to the neighborhood. We hope that that will continue. But I wanted also to save you some time. There are a number of people here who are very much in support of the tree preservation because the trees that hopefully now will not be cut down would not have been able to be cut down under the UCC or would have required a special permit with notice. And so I'd like to ask all of the tree supporters here to stand up.
What I got. I'm sure everybody else is, but.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. That concludes my remarks, and I think I'm under 3 minutes, Mr. Young.
Thank you, Mr. Arsenault. Mr. Andy Craig. Next up will be Mr. Rob Broussard after Mr. Craig. No, he wasn't.
Andy Craig, 1324 North Market, North Hearn, Suite 301,
Zip. Yep,
Shreveport 71107.
thank you.
My remarks will be brief also, and I do thank you for taking on this great effort. It will hopefully greatly simplify our jobs. The first thing I want to point out in the landscape plan approval and required submittals, you're allowing the landscape plan to be submitted by landscape architect or civil engineer, but you left out architects. I don't do many landscape plans, but architects do a lot of them. So anyway, just wanted to point that out. Also, the other is, following the last talk, this may be a little risky, but we're not opposed to the tree preservation, protection, and incentive. But you got to realize that your requirements for the tree removal plan, as a surveyor, especially on the outskirts of town, most sites I could go survey and I could draw a squiggly line around it and call it jungle. And so it's going to be onerous on developers, anybody to get a new site for me to pay me as a surveyor to go in and locate all those trees. Somewhere there's got to be a better way to do that in between a complete location of every tree and then a complete removal of them also. There are trees we need to preserve. Also, there's a statement in here about the removal of trees for the purpose of filling the regulatory floodplains is not considered a special circumstance and is subject to the terms and provisions of this section. Another fact that most of the sites we encounter now, most of the best sites have been developed, so a lot of the sites we get into are in floodplain. And so if it's floodplain and overgrown, for us to get it out of the FEMA regulations, reduce flood insurance requirements, we have to fill it. So somewhere there's got to be some way to work that out also. But if we have to fill it, we have to clear the trees. And that's almost a rule instead of an exception nowadays. So we need some way to be able to present that and anticipate that and get around that requirement. So that's all I've got tonight.
Thank you, Andy.
Thank y'all.
It's almost like you was reading my mind because I talked to Mark about that same subject a little earlier. Here it goes. Mr. Rob Broussard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Rob Broussard. I live at 451 Sandifer, Shreveport, Louisiana. Very briefly, I want to come before this board again and remind you that we've been here once about the proposed Walmart on Uri Drive. I want to just make sure that's in an official notification. We got a letter from them that said that, and I'm going to read it to you, just the appropriate part, that we don't have any plans to locate a store there, open another store at this time. At this time. Language is so important. And with so many people having signed confidentiality agreements, we can't find out if Walmart was actually involved in the purchase of that. The property's on hold right now. We do know they talked to this gentleman over here, Mark Sweeney, and we went through the back door to try to find out if indeed they were. People are trying to purchase the property, and everybody answered us with confidentiality agreements. So we went, like I said, through the back door, and we started asking people, companies, are you going to buy that piece of property? And every one of them said no. The only people that said, oh, we have a confidentiality agreement, we can't talk about it, was Walmart. So we kind of figured that maybe Walmart was the one that was looking at buying the property. All we ask is under the new UDC code and the codes that are existing right now, please, please, ladies and gentlemen, consider what the residents of the Broadmoor area are asking you. We've had a vote 2 times in our neighborhood association. At both times with the members present, they were present. There was a 100% vote in opposition of them locating there. So we're going to be creating a petition. We want to make sure it's nice and tidy and legal, and we want to use the right language that will help you making a decision that will represent us. Thank you for the UDC code work. I appreciate what y'all have done too, and we really appreciate y'all listening and hearing what the citizens want. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Mr. Bill, I think it's Weiner? Did I get that right?
Yes. Hello, I am Bill Weiner, a retired architect. I live at number 2 Longleaf Lane, Shreveport. I've been involved with this for 60 years. When I was little, Arch Winter came to the house for dinner, and he showed me the plan, and that got me interested in all of this, and I've been following it for years. I came here originally to say exactly what you said at the opening. It's time to do it. It can be changed. We can correct it. It's a living document. But as I listened, I made some comments, and they're just conceptual. And there's 10 of them, so I'm going to go really quick. I think we need to look more at our historic districts and better protection. There's good stuff out there that'll tell us how to do it better. Our parks and open space are sacred. It's hard to recreate them. People have donated the lands in perpetuity. But if they're not used, it's because the neighborhood has gotten old, the people have gotten old, they don't have children anymore, the houses have run down, and the prices come down, and new couples move in, have children, and the parks are needed again. I think the 25% windows is ridiculous. Because in Shreveport, we have problems with west sun, and the number of windows and the location has to do with the orientation of the building. I don't know if you address solar panels, but they're going to become more prolific, and there needs to be some control. You don't want people putting them in their front yard. Recycling, what I call the zone in transition, the old zone around the core. The code should encourage recycling rather than demolition or infill. The material limits make no sense to me. I have designed some buildings which have won awards, which couldn't have been built under this code. And new materials are coming along. Why would you limit what you can do? The sign ordinance, I don't know if it addresses digital signs, but that's a whole new category that needs to be looked at separately. The goal should be not just, it should be making Shreveport better, not just bigger. And a phrase I have coined is great cities are the result of careful planning. Others are the result of haste and greed. I heard about the tree code. Look at what Aspen, Colorado has, their tree code. It's terrific. It's tough, but it accomplishes it. It looks at the diameter of trees, and you can't take a tree down on your lot without paying, unless there's a reason, and there's some reasons. So basically, those are the things that I would like to see addressed and considered and talked about. Thank you.
Thank you. Max Smalley Jr.
First of all, I'd like to say good evening. I'm Max Smalley Jr. I own property at 5601 Robert Street, Shreveport, Louisiana, 71109. One of the main reasons I'm here is because we need to do something about the ordinance and codes as far as you being able to bring in a pre-built building, a structure. It's already together. You're gonna finish it out. You ought to be able to bring it in on your property and be able to convert it to a home. That's what I want to do. But I can't do that because it's built off-site. That's a problem. So I do have a permit, but I'm going to use pretty much the same design that I have. I'm going to have to build a structure on site, then bring that structure already paid for and use it as a storage building. So if we can change the code some type of way, because it's the same for businesses as far as commercial, they can bring in a building. You know, they don't have these restrictions. So I think if we change that, I think that'll be a great thing. You look around in the city, you see a lot of vacant lots. You say to yourself, okay, they knocked down some buildings that didn't look very well. You know, they were eyesore. You know, but also people will look at the vacant lot and say, should I really come and live in Shreveport? Is it a good thing that those lots are vacant? Or is it more eye-appealing if somebody comes in and build a structure there? That's what I want to do. You can make the process a whole lot easier. It doesn't have to be difficult as it is. I had to take off work on several occasions to keep reworking my plan over and over. And then when you go up to the fourth floor, here's the deal. They tell you so many times what you can't do. Tell me how I can do it. There's going to be some people that are going to assist you in permits. There's going to be some people that assist you as far as inspections. They're really going to be very helpful. And that's more what we need. And I was telling the gentleman, I said, these codes got to be from the 60s. I said, when were they developed? And he told me, he said, I think maybe 1957 or 67, whichever one it was. I knew it was somewhere around the 60s. It didn't take me researching it, didn't take me looking at any city or parish ordinance. I mean, it's just common sense. It's time to change. The times have changed. You know, I got a lot of relatives. They moved away from here. because things are a little difficult. They're a little hard. You go somewhere else, it's a lot different. It's more up to date. And like you say, you're going to get people that are going to want to invest when you got codes that are uniform, when you got some that are futuristic. And that's what we need to be about. You want revitalization, well, you have to change. You have to change. The times have changed. The people need to change. So I'm asking you to really look at that. And I want to meet the 196 square footage requirement. I'm going to do that, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Witt, do we have any others? Yeah. Well, hang on, we have some more cards, and then we'll go to everybody else. Thank you. Thank you. James Flurry, City Councilman.
James Flurry, 9433 Brookside Circle, Shreveport, 71118. I'm here today to ask a few questions concerning the matrix in Section 5. I noticed that the P, does permitted have the same as use by right? Okay. I have concerns there because I have 4 cemeteries in my district, and I noticed that we need to do some critiquing on those P's and those S's because cemeteries, mausoleums, and we had a case, I'm told, years back on Lyon Avenue where the old creosote plant that they wanted to put in a mausoleum. It was defeated, but I think we need to look. How did you determine those P's and S's on those different zones?
We typically would look and see what the current ordinance would allow, and then we compared it to some of the other cities and saw what the structure was. Typically, when we put an S in there, the S means special use permit. That means you have to go through a process of applying for that through the MPC and then on to City Council or Parish Commission for approval. P means it's allowed by right, which means you simply have to go in. You may have to do a site plan, but then you can go and get your permit at the permit office to develop the property. So though the designation of P was based on what we found to be true in other communities and what we've traditionally probably done in the community today.
Okay. Are you flexible on that, making some
We've
movement
always
of
been
changes
flexible.
on those?
Sure.
Because
Absolutely.
they definitely, several of them, like group home is there.
Right.
And the city council passed an ordinance, making you have to have certain distance, but group home is under, I believe, P there.
Yeah, and the federal law requires us to do
It
that.
requires it,
Yes,
okay.
That's unfortunate. That's,
All right.
restrictions on that one.
And the next question I have, tell me, how does the landscape ordinance downtown change? Is it a game changer? Where I know is this a good statement, that your consultant told you that we had plenty of parking downtown?
Didn't tell me that. That might have been a statement that was made before by someone. We didn't get into the conversation about whether or not there was ample parking or not. That's really something that needs to be done by a market study or whatever to determine what parking's needed.
Because if you're looking at parking at Caddo and having to walk to work, it's not gonna fly.
I would say that the landscaping is designed to encourage landscaping in the downtown area, but you also have to remember that if someone is coming into an older building, an existing structure, and they're renovating it, and they're not adding on to the parking, then we don't require them under the UDC to add additional landscaping.
Okay.
So there's a lot of flexibility built in there. It still encourages landscaping because that's what most downtown areas do nowadays, is have good streetscaping and landscaping. But in all cases, it's not always be applicable.
The zoning map that you're providing is not efficient. I mean, it's hard to read. We want to see the streets.
Right.
Blocks. Is there a remedy for that?
I believe we can do that. Part of the reason why we didn't put the street names on every street is it creates a tremendous ability as far as the maximum ability to handle it from the computer in terms of capacity. So what we've done is we only put in occasional street names, but what we should do and we can do is that if you need a blow-up version of a section of the city, then my mapping GIS department can provide you that, and we can add in some additional street names.
Okay, because I think several people are
Sure.
going to want that, to look at that. One thing I want to say that I disagree with is I don't think you should have to provide the botanical name of trees. I think that's an overreach.
The reason that's required in the UDC is because there's so many different varieties of the same plant. Like there's multiple varieties of crepe myrtles, and it allows the applicant to know exactly what's going to work here in our soil and weather conditions. So that's typical in almost every city that has a plant palette, is asking, they typically don't mind giving us the botanical name because that's how they determine which plant they're getting. So that's the reason why it's there.
All right, and one other thing I want to say is the three-car garage that you're prohibiting, cannot have three-car garage facing the street. I believe the builders in this parish are going to find that not appealing. I know you said they could go around to the side, to the back, and have a garage, but I think about all these nice homes in the southern part of the city and the parish, and I'm not sure that's going to work, and I hope that you would think about that. And lastly, the manufacturing homes, I worry about the citizens of this city and this parish that don't have the funds, that have to pour a slab. And I think about maybe some of our citizens in the northern part of the city that want to upgrade to a manufactured home, and there not being a park would be restricted in doing so. So that's all the comments I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Clark. I'm probably going to butcher this one. Laura Schlitt, S-C-H-L-I-D-T. Okay. All right. Jeff Epperson, Councilman. Time's up. Oh,
Thank you so much. I am Jeff Everson, 1053 Boulevard Street, and I want to start out just by thanking all of you for getting this to a point where we can start to consider it from our time that we sit up there. And I know that I have been involved since, gosh, I guess it was 2011 when we initially started looking for the funding. Windsor was there, and as part of the Master Plan Implementation Committee. And so it's been a long time coming, and I certainly appreciate the effort. I want to say that in this most recent draft, I do see a lot of responses to the concerns that I had heard expressed both by others and a couple of concerns that I expressed myself. I'll take one as an example. Was one of the things that I was concerned about is particularly commercial property in neighborhoods like Allendale, Queensboro, Highland, parts of Broadmoor, that are older in nature. Those commercial properties, you know, they face undue challenges because of zoning laws sometimes for redevelopment. And so one of the issues that was addressed was the parking. I'm a little concerned that the language is not, could still have some unintended consequences, so maybe needs to be a little further refined. But I want to say how much I do appreciate the opportunity to have provided a lot of that input, and I see a number of responses in here that are seeking to address that. They may not be exactly where I'm hoping yet, but it certainly is a good feeling to know that these concerns are being considered and addressed, and you know, I look forward to being able to consider this, and certainly want to ask people to take a good look at this, those who are in the audience. And it is great today also, it speaks to the public outreach to see today. I see a lot of leaders of neighborhood associations, industry associations, you know, attorneys, a lot of architects, engineers who are all here giving feedback, which is such a wonderful thing to see. It's exactly the type of feedback we need to make this work the best for all of us. And so do want to express thanks for that process. It's been a long time coming, but you know, really I think well worth it, and looks to be a very high quality product with maybe a few additional tweaks before we get it finalized. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Epperson. Mr. Jimmy Kuvion. I don't know if I should pull the same thing and say, time's up, Jimmy.
You say? Jimmy Kuvion, 3315 Chamont, Southern Hills. I'm going to be fairly brief. The definition of permitted, I couldn't find it. I looked at 2.3 and 5.3. And you probably figured out you probably didn't even need a definition for permitted. My question about permitted relates to the matrix chart. Permitted to me means closely would be used by right. That's
correct.
Got a good shaking head. That's good. That's good. So any of the P's on the matrix would not require a public hearing. They could be handled simply by the applicant coming, and if he has an adequate site plan that is accepted, he could get his permit to go build anything here that has a P. Anything that has an S requires a public hearing. That's correct? Okay. What I've got here is just a list, and I'm not going to go through it, but I've got a little list here of those that I think that you may want to reconsider, possibly changing the P to an S, only because it affects neighborhoods that are residential, that basically such things as churches, such things as schools. They basically do have an impact on a community, and what we had before, or what we have now, is that you have to have a variance. You have to go before the ZBA to get a variance to put a school or a church in the residential districts. This will eliminate the need to go and get a variance from the ZBA because it's a P. Okay. Now, what is a planned unit development? The definition of that related to the buildings that you would run into. I mean, if you have a church or you have a school that has a number of buildings, wouldn't that pretty well put it into a planned unit development or not?
You have to ask for a planned unit development, and it usually is a mixed-use approach. It can be a strictly residential project, but it's typically something like Camp Forbing Shopping Center.
Yeah.
It is a multiple of uses. Typically, when a church comes in and they have multiple buildings, they don't come in under a planned unit development because the purpose for doing a planned unit development is to get some type of relief from the ordinance, but in return, you give some amenity back. Now, that doesn't mean a church couldn't ask for PUD, planned unit development, but most of them don't do that because they don't usually have residential with commercial with businesses located on the same location. That's typically why people will ask for a planned unit development.
I see.
Because it gives them greater creativity.
Yeah. So in other words, it would just the way it is now, it would be a use by right to put a church or a school in a residential development. And you wouldn't need a hearing.
That is
You wouldn't
true.
need a notification.
That is true.
Okay. Well, I have a little list of the Ps that I think you should reconsider for S's.
Okay.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jimmy. Next, I have Mr. John Hubbard. Ms. Witt, do you have any more? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. John Hubbard, 9406 Stonebriar Circle, Shreveport, Louisiana, 71115. I'm here on behalf of Southwestern Electric Power Company. And we've been providing electric service to Shreveport Caddo for over 100 years. So with that, I'm going to read this statement that I'm asking that you consider to adopt, put as a preamble of sort, or if you don't put it in there, that it's just on the books. All electric transmission and distribution lines, wires, poles, along with any and all
electric-related facilities, including electric substations, in any way necessary to serve or service by an public utility subject to the jurisdiction of the Louisiana Public Service Commission shall be exempt from the limitations and requirements of the Unified Development Code, including but not limited to the restrictions on vegetation management contained in Article 10 and limitations on the right-of-way contained in Article 12. As I told Mr. Sweeney, constitutionally, we are governed by the Louisiana Public Service Commission. They have jurisdiction. They have stringent service quality standards that we have to meet. And additionally, there are federal standards, there are National Electric Code standards, and a National Electric Safety Code standards. We're required to trim trees. And vegetation management, it's a big deal. There are service quality requirements that are put on us, and there were more put on us, more stringent put on us again this year by the Public Service Commission. I will simply tell you that what I've seen in this document seems bureaucratic in a lot of ways when our customers simply want their lights on, and we know what causes the lights to go off. And the requirements to provide sketches for a 1 or 2 mile long trimming of trees, and that's why we're under the Public Service Commission. That's why the Louisiana State Constitution put us there. And imagine the hundreds of communities that all of them come up with something akin to this. How do you know what to do where? I mean, all we want to do is keep the lights on for our customers. It's that simple. There's not a retaliatory bone in our body. That's our charge, and that's what we do. And so there are things in there that just don't work. So that's why we don't feel that we're under this. We are under the standards of the Public Service Commission.
Mr. Hubbard, one thing I've noticed in the landscaping requirements in the future is the size limit trees that can be planted underneath your power lines, as well as distance from the center line out.
I don't think they look at the standards.
Well, what I'm saying is anybody who plants in the future, with new subdivisions, if you have arrow lines, the trees are going to be not allowed to grow up to a certain height that will get into your lines.
I saw that. It's 25 feet. We have open wire secondary at about 18, 19 feet. Right. So there are.
You said that, so we can
so
look at revising that, because our goal is just to not let anybody plant an oak tree that's going to be 60 feet tall.
Yeah, and I understand that. They just didn't reference what voltage we put at what level. Somebody, please don't try to manage our business. I mean, I don't know if it's retaliatory. It was suggested to me that there were certain staff people put things in. It wasn't something that MPC came up with. I wasn't there, so I don't know if that's true or not, but it did come from MPC staff. But with all that said, let us meet the standards of the Public Service Commission. And I don't know what you're trying to achieve for us, but we've got 100 years of doing this. And I know people love trees, and I like them too, and I've got them in my yard. But please don't try to help us.
Trust me, we're fully aware of the situation you're put in with the Public Service Commission. My business is around the corner from a nursing home.
Mm-hmm.
Last thing that nursing home needs is to lose power.
Yes, sir.
They have people in there that are on life support systems that have to be monitored second by second. So
we've got customers in their homes that are on the same thing. And businesses, just, you can extrapolate that as far as you want to go. But I've been doing this work for 47 years, and in about a month. And it is we just know what the issues are, and we address those, and we got arborists that tell us how to best, for the life of the tree and the good of the tree, where to make cuts and those type of things. And I got it. This was planted by your grandmother, and now it's up in our primary, and it's causing outages. We got that. But the way we cut it is not a malicious act, And we oftentimes, if not always, talk to the customers when they're available and talk through how we're going to do it. And if you don't want that to occur, we can take the tree down, is often one of the things we say to them. So it is, but as a councilman, and I'll let him speak for himself, told me, well, I went back to something that y'all trimmed some time ago, and you know, that tree's recovered. It doesn't look as bad as it used to, and they do. So that's all. Just consider that as a preamble. We're not mad at you, but we can't live with that.
I understand.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Johnny Williamson? Johnny Williamson?
Good evening. My name is Johnny Williamson. I'm not an attorney, elected official, just a volunteer in the neighborhood. Several things I wanted to talk about. Several of the city councilmen.
Your address, please, for the
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I live at 312 Pier Avenue, Allendale, heartbeat of the city. It's the only way downtown can move.
Zip code?
71101.
Thank you, sir.
Several things I wanted to talk to you about or speak about. Several people have already spoke about it, but let me say thank you. I'm working on a project, and I've looked at the codes in Baton Rouge, New Orleans, Houston, and Dallas, and even Bossier City. And by far, y'all's are the easiest to understand. So a little country boy like me, I went right through them. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about is a construction program that's coming to Shreveport. And it's probably going to be the largest program ever to come here. And I haven't heard anything about it. I'm sure somebody is taking it into account, but they just haven't put it on paper or mentioned it. And I wanted to throw it out there and ask them at the next meeting to maybe talk to us about it. It's called I-49. It's coming. I don't want it, but it's coming. I purchased me a piece of land, and I'm going to move my house if I-49 comes that way. So, it's coming. The second thing I want to talk to you about is the codes of the property. I live at 312 P Avenue. That is one of the only streets west of Hearn Avenue, east of Hearn Avenue and west of Line Avenue that you can egress and regress on I-20. That is an important street or corridor. If they build I-49, that could be a great commercial area, just like Erie Drive. It's my understanding, and the reason I know this is because I own several pieces of property. I bought the property as adjudicated property 20 years ago. When my friends was buying new cars and stuff like that, I bought adjudicated property for my retirement, and I have retired. Several pieces of this property is zoned commercial. One is B1 and one is B2, which means supposedly one will be C2 and one will be C1. But now, it's my understanding, all along P Avenue, you want to make it residential. I'm working on this special project. It's called Aquaponic Garden. Yesterday, I walked P Avenue from 4th Street to I-20. I found very few lots other than the churches that's wider than 30 feet. I think y'all call it investment in the urban core. I talked to several people, and I would take a survey, but I know you're not going to let me do it. And that would be, who's going to invest $50,000 plus to build a house on P Avenue? Raise your hand. Thank you. Please let it stay as a commercial corridor. I think it will be a plus for I-49. Like I say, you can get on and get off and go east or west on I-20. And it's very important. And let me say thank you. I consider it an honor, privilege, and a pleasure to come before you today and nowhere but in America. God bless America.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Swift. Mr. Wick?
I just had a question for you. Would you submit that in writing to the office, please? Or-
Not only in writing, but I'll give you some drawings, because I've been doing a lot of measuring.
That'd be wonderful. We just wanted to make sure that you.
Who should I give it?
Specific. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you,
And
sir.
again, thank you.
Yes,
God
thank you.
bless America. Good night, everybody.
Miss Jessica Ray? Jessica?
Hello, my name is Jessica Ray. My address is 635 Kirby Place, and my zip code is 71104. I am a Highland resident. Like Mr. Williams, I don't come to you tonight as a professional, an engineer, an architect, or anything like that. What I do come to you as is a homeowner. I come to you as a customer of Mr. Hubbard's, and I want to strenuously say that, yes, I love my trees, but please let him do his job. The trees that they need to cut, there are more of them. Highland has, and yes, we have tree lovers, God love them, I love the trees. But we have tenuous hold on our electricity in Highland. It doesn't take much for our power to be out as it is. And with the winter and everything coming, if they're not able to do what they have to do, it makes it harder being a homeowner. That's just one of those things that they have to be allowed. Y'all have to give them some reasonable room to do what they need. As far as trees in right-of-ways and trees that could cause potential problems with vision and sight, like the two trees that have been mentioned at the church at St. Mark's Cathedral, if you drive to where those trees are and see what they're trying to do there, that could cause potential problems. Let those engineers and the architects that are doing that, let them have the leeway to decide that whether those trees go or stay, and not just based on, yes, that tree has been there 100 years. It's a beautiful live oak tree. They both are. But please take in consideration with your ordinance that the people that are professionals